Hello and welcome to the Sustainable Cities episode on Green Talk, the podcast that answers all your questions on sustainability and eco-friendly living. My name is Lydia, and today Aiden, Kim, Christian, and I will be comparing and contrasting different green initiatives taken in different cities around the world. Why don't we take a moment to introduce ourselves and our focus of study?
Hi, I'm Aiden, and I specialize in sustainability research in the United States with a special focus on LA as well as developing countries such as South Africa.
Hey there, I'm Kim, and most of my research is focused on Northern Europe, but particularly the city of Amsterdam.
Hey, I'm Christian, and I'm a sustainability expert for countries in Southeast Asia, and my personal favorite is Singapore.
And as you know, I'm Lydia, and my specialty is sustainability research in Canada. I'm particularly interested in the city of Vancouver and their Greenest City initiative that's been in motion for the past decade.
Oh yeah, how did that work out for Vancouver? Because according to my research, Amsterdam still ranks higher than Vancouver for being one of the greenest cities in the world.
Well, come 2020, Vancouver is not the greenest city in the world, but it's still very green. It does rank as the greenest city in Canada and is roughly 26th on the global scale. Although the Greenest City Action Plan didn't make Vancouver the greenest city in the world, it was able to make some positive improvements to the city. For example, in the past decade, the city of Vancouver has decreased community-based greenhouse gas emissions by 12%, reduced total solid waste by 28%, planted 122,000 trees, and have restored around 26 hectares of natural area. Vancouver is a real leader in terms of Canadian cities, and I know that a lot of similar projects are being done on the West Coast, but on the US side as well. So Aiden, what does urban planning and sustainability look like south of the border?
Great, so we're really focusing on green urban planning as it pertains to questions of indoor air quality, natural lighting, reduction of chemicals, all of which are really important to human health, which right now in the midst of a COVID pandemic is of high priority. So if we can reduce the incidence of sick building syndrome, something super important right now when people are spending more time than ever indoors, that would be excellent. So some of our initiatives include Parking Day, which was born in San Francisco. And that's a movement which turns an ordinary parking spot into a miniature park for a day. This is to remind citizens of the importance of green spaces in cities. Los Angeles also has their own version of the Green New Deal called PLAN, and this aims at creating equality and a strong economy powered 100% by renewable energy.
Yeah, so in terms of city sustainability goals, Amsterdam is extremely focused and on track to realizing its own personal sustainability goals in respect to its public transport, building infrastructure, and municipal technology such as lighting fixtures and electric charging stations. The city aims to reduce CO2 emissions in Amsterdam by 55% 2030, 95% in 2050, and it also aims to have 80% of the electricity used by households to be powered by solar and wind energy.
Cool. We've done some similar stuff south of the border. In the States, we've focused on Green Building Council's LEED, which is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. This is a certification that is globally recognized because it provides builders with a framework for creating and implementing green building design, construction, operations, and maintenance in a way that is measurable.
Oh yeah, they use LEED certification in Canada too. Green buildings are an integral part of urban sustainability. Actually, Vancouver has been working to have no greenhouse gas emissions for all new buildings by 2030. Recently, there's been a big push to make old buildings environmentally sustainable in order to preserve historical and cultural significance. But I just find it interesting that many developed cities are historically environmentally unfriendly. The industrial boom in the early 1800s led to the advancement of many Western countries, but have resulted in a mess of environmental problems.
Right, so my question with that is, what about currently underdeveloped countries? There's this huge debate around the fact that the West got to reap the benefits of using coal and other environmentally damaging sources to drive industrialization and increase in wealth. But developing countries are expected to shift to an environmentally friendly economic boom. Coal and other fossil fuels can be cheaper than sustainable energy, so I think that developed countries have an obligation in helping create and install environmentally friendly energy and technology. Christian, I know you specialize in East Asia. Can you tell us more about the initiatives that have been taken there?
Yeah, so Singapore is an interesting case because it started out as a third world country initially and was in particular turmoil in the 60s with mass pollution, poverty, and corruption. However, once they declared national freedom, they adopted a futuristic mindset with a country that's 13% larger than Toronto, but nearly 2 times its population dense. It is these constraints, along with their lack of natural resources, that focus Singapore on investing in sustainability, education, and economic growth. And after nearly 60 years, they're one of the most livable cities in Asia and one of the most sustainable in the world. Singapore is well known for its lavish green architecture, where buildings are literally covered in plants. The key factor that led to all these new buildings being green is an incentive program where the government will pay for half of the installation fees for any green spaces, from green rooftops to vertical gardens. And this effectively replaced greenery lost through development with greenery on buildings. One more example I have to mention is Gardens by the Bay, which is a man-made natural park where the famous super trees are located. These large structures contain a rich biodiversity of plants and even contain solar panels for powering the facilities. Integration of the biosphere and urban living is an important part of building sustainable cities.
Yeah, so adding on to the concept of capitalizing on the natural biosphere, Amsterdam is also implementing systems to capture and reuse rainwater. These are in features such as green roofs, water butts, and gray water-based sanitary facilities. It's intended to help protect streets, cellars, and houses from water damage. The idea is that all the new buildings, including those which don't need to apply for planning permission, can deal with up to 60 milliliters of water on their plot of land. And this is from the Dutch News. So you could install a blue roof that acts as a temporary lake and then slowly drains water, or a blue-green roof with sedum plants, and they have an ability to hold some water.
Singapore also has an extensive rainwater collection system throughout the country to capitalize on the 2.4 meters of annual rain. One example is at Changi Airport, one of their largest airports, where nearly a third of all water used is from their rain collection systems, which saves about $250,000 a year. It is even being used to water a greenhouse with an indoor waterfall. Speaking of airports, what about green transportation?
Yeah, so all of the trams and subways in the city of Amsterdam run on green energy, and the city aims to have all buses to be electric by 2025. The city has concrete goals for changes within the city's concentrated travel center. From 2025, only electric scooters and mopeds will be allowed in the built-up area of Amsterdam that is very densely populated. By 2030, the entire built-up area of Amsterdam will be emission-free for all forms of transport, including cars and motorbikes. Also, Amsterdam was voted as the most bicycle-friendly city on several occasions. Approximately 40% of traveling there occurs by bicycle in the city. On the left, those are the green cars, and on the right are people on their bikes.
Wow, that's an insane amount of cyclists. In Vancouver, cycling accounts for 7% of the transportation share, but 53% of transportation in the city is by walking, cycling, or public transportation, which means that a majority of the population uses sustainable means of transportation. In the past decade, the city's also created extensions for their train and have also created bus-only lanes to make public transportation more accessible and widespread.
Wow, cool. So in milder climates with less snowfall, we like to use scooters as a means of transportation. Scooters are widely used in places like Washington, D.C., where it's more stylish than riding the bus and cheaper than taking an Uber car. It's all run by apps, so it's pretty user-friendly. So it's not to say that it's without concerns, but it's definitely innovative and trendy.
I'd also like to bring up 2 other examples of cities moving towards greener transportation. One is London, England, which began charging vehicles a fine for driving in central London to reduce their congestion, and they reinvest this money into improving their bus system. Another example is in Bogota, Colombia, where the government built an 18-kilometer walkway through the city center to encourage pedestrians and cyclists. This was done as a low-cost investment to shape the public's behavior in favor of a greener and healthier mindset for sustainable projects.
Those are great points, Christian. As mentioned earlier, I also specialize in developing countries, so I'd love to briefly talk about South Africa. Here we've used satellite imagery, geographic information, and national census statistics to show that both public and private green infrastructure is more abundant and accessible in higher income areas. So South Africa already lies within a drought belt and faces issues of water scarcity. Furthermore, much of their economy relies on abundant biodiversity, which is heavily threatened by climate change. So racial segregation in South Africa during and after apartheid have really influenced access to green infrastructure over time. In one study done by Hardy, marine shells collected from marine deposits were analyzed using strontium dating, and their findings clearly suggest indications that global sea levels are going to further increase in the coming years. So this really needs to be planned for in order to prevent further inequality.
Yeah, I read that in South Africa, they're depleting some of their largest freshwater lakes. Lake Sibia, which has dropped over 4 meters over the last decade and is now at risk of being polluted by seawater. So the filtration systems for desalination of ocean water, I know, are very costly, and I bet that's another reason for their exclusive accessibility to higher income countries.
Yes. So the already developed world has to commit to multiple things in order to secure a sustainable future for all people on Earth. Well, first, they must become green themselves, whether that may be by adapting and improving old technologies or implementing new ones. Sustainable urban planning is crucial in decreasing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing the quality of life. Second, as Aidan mentioned before, the developed world has an obligation to aid the underdeveloped and developing world in accessing sustainable energy technologies and creating sustainable urban centers from the start. Since these green technologies are costly to implement, the developed world must step in, as they are crucial in securing long-term economic gain and mitigation of future environmental dilemmas.
Great. So green urban planning and the implementation of sustainable energy can definitely equalize many disparities in wealth, quality of life, health, and even security of life. But we must act now. So with that, I think that's all the time we have for today. So thanks for listening to another episode of Green Talk, and we hope to see you next week for when we discuss the politics of climate change denial. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.